It is Severe Weather Preparedness Week, and Adam Sherwinski is here with some safety tips related to the weather. Thank you so much for being here.
It's kind of a big week. It's the first full week of meteorological spring, so every year around the first week, the National Weather Service designates that as Severe Weather Preparedness Week in the state of Illinois. And we're not the only state that does this. Indiana does it, Ohio, all the states do it, even Missouri. They just have it at different times, too, depending on the office. So our office, closest office, is the Lincoln office there, the National Weather Service office in Central Illinois. And so they've been really putting out a lot of good communication about it. So every day this week is about a different topic. Monday was about communication, so where to go to find your weather alerts here, where to go to make sure you know what's going on, that kind of stuff, making sure that you know what they're telling you is important. So like having your tornado sirens are great, which we tested there on Tuesday. But at the same time, they're not really useful if you're jamming out to your music in the middle of the night or you're asleep. Hard to hear that stuff, especially if a storm's barreling down on you. So having multiple ways of getting severe weather alerts is kind of one of the main messages there. When it comes to Tuesday, we had our statewide tornado drill. You probably heard that there about 10 a.m. Might have scared you a little bit there because we had some gray skies and thunderstorms. But I will say that 10 a.m. is when we normally do it, the first Tuesday of every month. However, it was the entire state now participating, and everyone was supposed to treat it as an active tornado drill. Again, drill, not an active tornado, but an active tornado drill. But again, it could have scared a few folks, and I think a few spots may have bowed out and said, we're not going to do it today because it looks too gloomy. People might get scared.
Sure.
Understandable. But I know in Champaign that they definitely had the sirens. I was in the news meeting, and I was like, oh, there's the sirens.
And it's funny because when I lived in Ohio, the tornado drill day was Wednesday morning. So I heard the drill, looked out, saw the gray, and was like, should I be concerned? But nobody else at the station. And luckily, I work here with fine weather folks.
If we're not worried, you should not be worried. So, but yeah, the statewide tornado drill annual event every year. Wednesday was about lightning safety, so how to make sure you're staying safe when thunder roars, get indoors is like the main crux of it. And we always say that, but it's very true. And then Thursday, today, we're talking about hail and damaging winds, which are also aspects of severe weather. Severe thunderstorms, and then flooding will be on Friday. That kind of makes it easy, right? So. And
what's one fun fact about flooding?
Fun fact.
Fun safety fact.
Yeah, something that we might need to keep people need to think about is turn around, don't drown is one of the ones we like to throw around a lot, and that's because when you're driving, you think, oh, I can go through that puddle, but there are times when that water it may have a little bit of a current you don't understand, or it doesn't take much, only a couple of inches for that big pickup truck to be swept away by some water. Again, it's very misleading sometimes. Just because it's a puddle one day doesn't mean that, you can go through every single puddle or you should go for the biggest puddles. I actually had one time where I was driving back here to Champaign. I was taking the road. I might not have been Champaign, maybe when I lived in Peoria. Either way, I was taking the same route, and I remember just there was so much water, and I started to go in it a little bit, and I was like, you know what? Not trusting it, turned around. That way I didn't drown.
I do like the rhymes so that it is very helpful to remember.
You know what? It really helps when you have those rhyming schemes. Let's take a look at the graphics, though, for today. Today's Thursday, so we're talking about hail. And hail's pretty interesting because it isn't always the same consistent size or the same consistent shape. Now, how does hail really impact us? Well, think about how big it can get. Pea size to marble size. You probably hear us say that on air, 1 inch. So those are kind of the things you have to think about is that when we say quarter, it's about the size of a quarter, but it's about 1 inch in diameter here. Ping pong, about 1.5 inches, and so on and so forth. So when we get storm reports, we talk about the diameter size. Sometimes we give the actual numbers roughly, or give it kind of like what you would think, okay, a hen egg.
A hen egg.
A tennis ball, a softball, or yes, even grapefruit, and that's about 4.5 inches.
Wow.
Which is possible, but that's super destructive. Now, when we do the criteria for severe thunderstorm warnings, 1 inch hail and upward is what we kind of look for. Now, hail does happen in thunderstorms that aren't considered severe. You get your pea size, your dime size, your marble sized hail, even nickel size. But once you start to get that quarter spot, that's when you can cause some damage with that hail. And the bigger the hail, the more damage you can do. And it can get pretty lethal too, especially with the heavier amounts there too as well, the bigger sizes of hail too. So keep that in mind that hail is no joke really. And the bigger the hail, again, the bigger the problems here. So we have sometimes where we have situations where we go, today is a severe weather day and we're watching out for hail. Don't think, oh, well, it's just hail. I don't really. Well, there are times where that hail can be big enough to cause a couple more than just a dent in your car. It could cause a lot of damage on the side of your house too as well. A lot of property damage is usually done with hail. And how does hail really form here? Well, it's pretty simple. You have an updraft, a really strong updraft, and that's keeping that basically that frozen water back and forth between the freezing level and not freezing level. So it thaws and freezes, thaws and freezes, thaws and freezes, thaws and freezes. And so it kind of gets that kind kind of like layers, like an onion.
Right.
And you kind of notice over time you get those layers, it builds up over time, and then at some point gravity just takes over, updraft isn't strong enough for it anymore, and it just crashes down to earth. So the bigger the hailstone, the stronger that updraft really is. So that really tells you the strength of that storm.
Right. And with that, what is something that you should do to sort of avoid that hail?
Stay indoors, for one.
Okay, well,
that's a given.
That's the obvious one.
But when you're outdoors, get indoors, obviously. But another one is kind of stay away from windows, too.
Okay.
I know when you're indoors, you want to watch the storm, but maybe get a little bit back, because if it takes a few more bounces and crashes through the window, then you've got glass everywhere. That could be dangerous as well. We always tell you when you have severe weather, even with lightning too, stay away from those windows. I know people want to watch, but just kind of scoot back a little bit.
Watch from a safe distance.
Watch from a safe distance. And again, the center of the house is one of the better spots to be in. Now, we also have wind to talk about too, real quick. One of the ways we get severe winds are with thunderstorms, obviously. Straight line winds can be a problem, not just tornadoes. And we get them through downbursts or microbursts too. And what it is you have an area of dry air, that cool air is evaporating, and it just falls rapidly here. So kind of like a big gush of air, and water just really goes outward. And you can see as it goes outward, it can cause gusts up to 150 miles per hour. And that's just straight line winds. And it can flatten some, I've seen videos where it's flattened forests before. So there's lightning safety. We don't have to talk about lightning so much here. That was a Wednesday thing, but I will say lightning, when thunder roars, get indoors. That's a key thing. Again, I could talk about safety all day.
Right.
But we have to keep going with the show, don't we?
Yeah, we do. But thank you, Adam. This was really informative. I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot of safety tips. And if you have a question for Adam, you can email him at Sherwinski@WCIA.com. And you can also find us on social media.